Hey everybody, welcome to the real United States, and welcome to the Agricultural History Farm Park here in Montgomery County in the great state of Maryland. Now this is a permanent park that has exhibits and docents that show you around and stuff all the time, but we are here for a two-day event this weekend called Sowing the Seeds of Victory, which is an educational event essentially about all things in and around World War I, including a suffragettes ladies' tea. They have a victory garden here over my shoulder. There are musicians live playing music from the era, and so we're going to show you a little bit around. This looks like a lovely event. We got a beautiful day for it. They've even got a demonstration about doing laundry in and around about 1917 or so, grinding grain by hand. There's all kinds of cool stuff here. So stick with us, we're going to show you around at Sowing the Seeds of Victory. So as I said, amongst the many exhibits they've got here, one of the things they have is a victory garden, which was a very popular thing for many households to have in both World War I and World War II. And we have one of the volunteers here, Catherine, who's going to try and tell us a little bit about victory gardens.
So this is our victory garden, a term that was first used in World War I, and victory gardens were used for people to plant in their own homes. So this is something that you could have in their backyard. And the point was to take some of the stress off of the farmers so that people could have their own food and provide for themselves. Since during World War I there was a lot of rationing, and a lot of the food that the farmers were making was being sent to the boys at war.
Right.
And so people would be able to grow their own food, and anything that they had left over they could send overseas. And this would be used for like a family of 5.
So what we have here would feed a family of 5, or supplement a family of 5.
This would feed a family of 5.
Yeah. Now, not only was food rationed because we were shipping so much overseas, but a lot of the people, the men, who produced food were overseas. So there was probably a reduction in food production for the nation as a whole, so this was also a necessity in that terms.
Yeah, exactly. And we have a whole another skit later today about the Women's Land Army and how since all the men were missing, the women tried to step up.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, Catherine. We're going to take a look inside it. This is all nicely fenced off. They've done a beautiful job here. And we're going to show you, they've got some raised beds around the outside, as well as the tilled area down through the middle. You want me to go ahead and grab that? And I'm going to give them a little bit of a moving tour here.
Cabbage and Brussels sprouts, and the Brussels sprouts being the taller ones. Here we have cauliflower. Here we have lettuce. 2 different types of lettuce actually. And then here we have spinach. And then here we have some colored greens, which is actually ready. You can see we plucked this off this morning. And then here we have some onions and then some carrots. And then back here we have beets. I remember they're beets because of like the red stems. Here we have some chard and some radishes. Another one that we just plucked out this morning. Chard, and then garlic, with of course some garlic, and then peas. And then here we're hoping to grow some kind of squash or melon or corn or tomatoes. And right now we're kind of trying to mix in the soil. This is manure that we got from Hope Farm, which is one of our sister farms. It's our nursery. So right now it's not ready to be planted yet.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
Hi everybody. Today we're right beside the Victory Garden and I'm going to plant some beet seeds. So you can watch me plant beet seeds and maybe learn something. What do we got? We got little cups. Thank you. This is called bull's blood beets. They're really deep, dark red beet. This is a little cup, so I'm only going to plant like 3 or 4 of them here. Beet seeds are not real big. Beet seeds are kind of small. So you can just pick them up and put them in the cup. And then cover them up. And then I'll water them when I get it home today. And after they come up a little bit, I will carefully pull them apart so that they can grow bigger and we can have beets and beet greens for lunch one day. It'll be wonderful. Thank you.
Now, amongst the setups they've got here, the displays, the demonstrations, is a thing about laundry. Now, folks, this is a little amusing to me, and I'll explain why in a moment. But you'll notice here they've got the clothesline poles with a clothesline on it. Clothes were hung out to dry in the sun, or in the winter, even in the freezing cold. Here is your washing machine. Now, the reason this is just moderately amusing to me is when I was first married, the first time, I didn't do this to Beverly. I bought my wife one of these brand new from the hardware store because we used cloth diapers with our daughter. And they had to be scrubbed on a regular basis. And in fact, my wife at the time, now ex-wife, scrubbed them all by hand and scrubbed them on a washer machine, a scrub board, a washboard, very much like this. So it's, and at the risk of dating my daughter, that was about 40 years ago, so not all that long ago, but certainly still a carryover from the early part of the 20th century and the late part of the 19th century. We didn't have the luxury of this wringer that the young lady is demonstrating here for us right now. And this is a wonderful thing. It's a couple of rollers that squeeze the water out of your clothing so that they will dry faster. Much like a spin cycle in a washer today, this is how it was done back in the day. Another interesting anecdote. I was a young man. This is probably back in the late 1980s. And I, in the course of conversation, was talking with my boss, mentioned that I didn't have a dryer. And he was a city boy, so he was very confused. And he looked at me very puzzled and went, "Then how do you get your clothes dry?" And when I explained to him that we use this sort of a setup, he's like, "But don't they get dirty again?" No, in fact, they don't. There's comparatively little dust in the air that would get on them. And they do get this very nice, airy smell about them that's very different from being in a dryer. So, yeah, folks, I'm an old man. So one of the other displays that they have here that would demonstrate life in or around 1917 is the grinding of grain, a very necessary part of life, obviously, for making breads and muffins and cakes and all the sorts of things. People would have to grind both wheat and corn and, of course, oats. Well, if you're looking, you're going to notice that these are actually recent era machines. And the reason for that is that these are still made. And I know that because I bought one. And but they work on the same premise that they always have, and that is an auger that runs through this cast iron body and 2 serrated plates that grind the grain down into finer and finer pieces. In this case, they've got cracked corn in here, and you can grind yourself some cornmeal for making Johnny cake, you know, cornmeal muffins, cornbread. And I gotta tell you, I never warmed to the idea of using this on a regular basis, because if you get this tight enough so that you grind a nice fine meal, you're gonna put some serious effort in your arm to turn this. But this was a necessary part, obviously, that a lot of women did all through history to make flour at home, rather than have it a whole grain to a grist mill and have it ground and then brought back. So, very lovely display, and obviously, like I said, these are still available for those of you who care to look them up and get yourself one.
just as many young men as we did in our own great Civil War. You know how much of a hardship that was for the women to keep going on after losing such an awesome number of men. How would we be able to provide in this new time period where things are changing at a rapid pace? Women may start to work outside the home. What then? Should they go to an office as a stenographer and make a quarter of what a man makes?
Well, I think that is a very valid point, and I would agree with you on that. But as far as women voting, I just think it's really, really unseemly.
So you feel, I'm sure, that women perhaps are much kinder and gentler than men. You say they bribe. They're not necessarily...
They're uncouth.
Yeah, indeed. Do you not feel like women could bring something to our laws to help balance that out? Perhaps we would be kinder and more rational.
Well, Mrs. Paul, here's what I would like to do. I think you have a good point. And in order to help convince more women of my age and my stature, I think perhaps I will invite you to tea at my house with some of my lady friends. And perhaps you could discuss it with them, but you should come prepared, very prepared, to hear an opposite point of view. And perhaps you will be convinced to our point.
Someday, sweetheart, you may be sorry for what you've done to my poor heart. You may regret the vows you've broken and the things you did that made us drift apart. You're happy. Thank you.
Someday, sweetheart.
We'll be back in a few minutes.
Well, that is pretty much what we've got for you on this tour here at the Agriculture History Farm Park here in Montgomery County, Maryland. And I hope you've enjoyed this visit here today. It's been a really nice event, the Sowing Seeds of Victory. And if you got questions or comments, hey, leave them in the comment section down below. I love hearing from all of you. I will try and answer whatever you've got. Also look for a link to the MontgomeryParks.org down in the description block. And if you're new here, hey, pick subscribe. Come along through the adventure. We got lots more to show you. And as always, thank you for watching.